everybody, and welcome to another episode of the She Compass Show, the show that helps you navigate your life. Today, we're here with Bethany Biron from Brooklyn. Hey, give it up for Brooklyn. I love New York. She's a freelance writer, and she has written for Fox Media and the Washington Post and Hello Giggles. This is just some of the great things I know. And she wrote a piece on the importance of knowing your worth without feeling like you have to attach it to a brand. As we know, when we're younger and upcoming, everybody has a lot of student debt. And we're going to talk about this with her today and try to get some insight on what we can probably do to feel better about ourselves without having to do that. How are you today, Bethany?
I'm great. Happy it's Friday. How are you?
Thank God it's Friday, right? That's been around for a long time. Yeah, I'm a baby boomer, and we used to always say, "Thank God it's Friday." They even wrote a song about it. So anyway, can you give us a little bit of insight on the importance of knowing what to maybe do? If you're someone out there, you're a younger person, you have a lot of student debt, and you have your challenges and looking good and trying to fit in without spending all these big bucks.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's a hard one to answer and to balance when you are navigating a significant amount of debt, but you also want to, present yourself professionally in whatever industry that you work. I found a lot of shortcuts and cheats personally. New York has an amazing thrifting scene. I will say there you can find some honestly brand new designer things for basically nothing at so many amazing shops. So that's things like that I think help. And just trying to be savvy. I've always been great at sale browsing and knowing when the best deals and clearances are happening. So that helps. But I think also just trying not to get super caught up in all of that, which I think is the harder part ultimately, is to realize that, as you said earlier, your worth is not tied to your monetary value or your clothing or how you present yourself in the world. It is in a certain aspect, but it doesn't have to be as, fraught as it sometimes is.
Yeah. And I think you just made a very important point. You can always shop at the thrift stores, and you have all these great ideas about how to get around it. If something's a little, used, so what, right? So you're still fitting in. And if you can get these things for wonderful prices and still look good and feel like you're fitting in, that's one great key point that I think you've just given all of us how to do that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yes. So can you tell us a little bit about the juggling act, if you could, a little bit about what you felt self-esteem wise and everything it so reminds me of The Devil Wears Prada, the movie. Is that really actually the way it is?
I think it definitely depends on your job and your position. In the Vox article, write that there were elements that felt that way. I didn't have an Anna Wintour-esque Meryl Streep boss breathing down my neck by any means. It wasn't like that, but there was the whole keeping up with the Joneses element of it, and a lot of very flashy events with insanely beautiful and wealthy people. And as someone who had not experienced that at all until I came to New York and started this job, it was pretty jarring at first. And I think it was hard for me not to separate this flashy, glitzy world from reality at the beginning. And realizing that it's easy to get caught up in it. I think as time progressed, I learned I came to New York to be a writer. I came to write about the industry. I'm not working in it, or wasn't working in it per se.
Right.
Over time, I would at these events that at the beginning were very intimidating, learn just, I'm there to do a job. Yes, it can be strange and kind of scary to feel very much out of your element at these types of events and venues, but I was there to interview people or write a story about something. And along the way I also would find fellow journalists looking equally as bewildered at these events. And we became friends and things like that, which is not to speak poorly of these
Oh,
events. A lot of them were incredible, and I'm very honored that I had the opportunity to do them, but I did feel a little bit out of my element and comfort zone, and that took time to get over.
yes, exactly. So you found some great allies in it, right?
Yeah.
So when you kind of hooked up with them, you could all say, okay, well, this is the way it is. You're walking into a very powerful world of people who have a lot of money, right? And it's like, what can I do to offset feeling that, either the low self-esteem, as you could say, feeling a little bit beat up by it, with no allies in it, right? And you're young and you just figure to yourself, okay, I'm here to do a job. I don't have to fit in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I know from the community that I came out of, like I said, I came from very humble beginnings, and people back then, it wasn't that kind of pressure. But now it's like with the younger people, if you're not carrying a Prada bag or a Gucci bag, or you have on something, people are looking for you to, because the thing about the bags now are just really totally ridiculous. It's like no one wants a bag unless it has a brand name on it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really pretty sad. So that's a great point that you made, that you could get in there and then with the people that you're working with, create allies, and then it makes you feel more comfortable. Did you ever really get totally comfortable in that world?
Oh man, honestly, probably not. I mean, I felt the most comfortable when I was back at my desk, like writing feature stories, which is always how I've been. I learned so much in that position. It was my first journalism job. I think ultimately I was sort of eager to explore other topics and other like forms of writing.
Yes.
I again grew so much, but I think by the end I always felt, I never quite felt like myself in that environment, which again, like not a bad thing, because you push yourself to learn and grow when you're uncomfortable ultimately.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the great thing that you get in out of it. And the great thing for people out there that are listening, maybe we can have them skip a step, right? Where if someone's in that realm of people, that they have some tools to be able to use. Because if you're looking at student debt, which why? That's all over America right now, right? Everybody's in debt from school, and it takes a long time to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of wherewithal to kind of hang in there in the job you're doing. So presently, are you still doing that right now?
Am I still doing what? Sorry.
Are you still writing? Are you still, what are you doing right now in terms of your career?
Yeah, so I have been freelancing for the past 4 months or so, which has also been a really big learning experience for me to essentially be my own boss. And
Wow.
it's definitely a hustle, but a fun hustle ultimately. I get to choose what I want to write about, potentially who I would like to write for. We'll also like exploring some other areas and other side hustles, just to keep on going. But yeah, it's tough, but I think it's been rewarding to me ultimately in the end. And I've enjoyed having this time to kind of, be my own boss, which is fun.
Wow. Yeah. Being your own, you can't beat that, being your own boss. In my career, I've always worked for myself, and it's a struggle within itself, right? Self-employment is hard too, because you have to have a lot of confidence with that too, to be able to maneuver, like you said, in that hustle. It's always a hustle. And people who get to work for somebody else and get a paycheck, that's the more convenient part. But if you're not the kind of person that that's not you've learned pretty early now, right? That you like it better this way.
Right.
Being your own boss.
Yeah, for now, definitely. I think there are a lot of benefits also to, working on a team and having colleagues and having all the benefits that come with that. So, it's definitely something I'm looking to get back to eventually, hopefully in the near future. But for now, it's nice to kind of do my own thing for a bit and figure it out, definitely.
Yes, and that's an experience within itself too. Can you tell me about let's see, I have a question, and it's I feel like, so do you think right now, can you tell us, for one thing, can I ask, how old are you?
I'm 27.
27. Wow. And you've done so much already, right? I mean, writing for the Washington Post, that's huge. And you're
Yeah,
27. I mean,
trying.
that's huge. I'm so proud of you. Can you give any advice out there to the young people like yourself, young women who may be having the same type of challenges that you've had, and how you've come through them so gracefully and made these choices? Is there anything you would like to say, that there was a formula or something that you did that made you feel comfortable in your skin?
Oh man, I wish there was a formula. Unfortunately, I do not have a formula. I'm still figuring that out. I will say I think it's challenging for those of us in the quote unquote creative fields, which journalism I think it kind of inherently falls into, and writing and whatnot. I mean, traditionally, those jobs don't, at the beginning, pay so well. And when you're navigating what you want to study in school and what you want to do professionally, it can be tough and kind of demoralizing when people are like, what are you going to do with that English degree, you know? But too, I found like, even there are challenges to pursuing your passions 100%. I'm much happier when I have, even if that comes to the, the peril of various other things, like balancing, like things being tighter financially and whatnot. And I think that ultimately will pay off, and does pay off when you're doing something that you're passionate about.
Yes.
Yeah, I think managing the debt thing is something I struggle with every day. I have no answer to that, really. I would never tell someone like not to like pursue journalism or something in the arts. I would just say to try your best to be smart about it, and like find as many resources as you can going in, which is easier said than done.
Yes.
I do think there's a lack of education around student debt, especially when you're 18 and you don't really know what you're doing. Or in my case, I was the first kid in my family, of my sister who's younger than me, to go to school, and my parents, went to college in a very different time, and it wasn't exorbitantly expensive the way it is now. So yeah, and knowing the difference between different types of loans. So, or like government issued loans are significantly less predatory than bank loans. And there are certain programs like the income-based repayment plan, which helps alleviate some of the baggage of that. Government or bank loans are not the case. They have incredibly high interest rates, which I think a lot of 18-year-olds don't really realize when they're, planning out their next 4 years or 2 years, what have you, in college. So yeah, a lot of factors to balance, but I think at the end of the day, this is a long-winded way of saying I really do believe in following your passions, even when the road to get there seems sort of murky and unclear and kind of scary, because in the end I do believe it pays off.
Yes. Well, I think you just gave people a bunch of help. Because if, like you said, when you're 18 and then you are navigating these treacherous waters for a long, long time, because I think about to myself, I didn't start buying expensive brands till I was in my 40s, right? But I had a 20-some year work history before that. So I just think with all of the glitter and glam out there right now, with the entertainment world, and younger people looking at them and saying, wow, I want that, watch, or I want that purse, or I want that car. And it's so far-fetched. And it's not reality, really, until you really can get in there and you have to work for it. And first, that student debt needs to go away, right? First and foremost, so
Right.
you can start living your life. I was talking to a young lady the other day that went to medical school, and she was just talking about how, I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of this debt, because everybody says, oh, wow, you're a doctor, but the debt you're in coming out of there, it just seems like it's never going to end, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people just really, I think, need to, it's like with me, I always tell people, you have to do things one at a time. Everybody's different, right? It's like DNA. I always say, in the thing that I do with hair loss, I always tell people, no two people are alike. So you're giving some great advice about how you went about it and how you're still going about it, right? Because it's a work in process.
Definitely.
So, maybe at the end of this, you were talking about the stores that you found, the places where people can go to get these things because a lot of people, New York is such a big place, right? So you're like a little baby fish in this big, gigantic pond because New York is huge.
Right.
I love New York. I love it. I love when I'm there, I feel like all the energy and excitement. It's a great place, but it's always a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think there's an abundance of thrift stores that I love. There's this great place called Beacon's Closet, which they have all over Manhattan and Brooklyn, and you can always find, honestly, like amazing things there. I worked at the now defunct store called Second Time Around, which existed in New York and also Chicago, as well as Boston and a few other cities, which is actually, and I write about this in the piece, how I purchased my first ever like real pair of designer shoes and sort of my thoughts and feelings around that. I think consumerism and consumer culture is really challenging, and I would never I too enjoy like retail therapy, and despite the fact that I don't have a ton of discretionary income, like I will go to some of my favorite stores or like shop online at Everlane, and and it gives me a little boost. And also I do believe in like when you look good, you feel good, and that's a big part of that. But I am every year finding ways to increasingly do that on the cheap and to be smart about it. I also am personally passionate about sustainable fashion, so I'm trying to be thrifting helps that, since you're buying things that have been worn and are part of like kind of the fast fashion culture. Yes. But I'm also trying to invest more in things that last longer and like basics that are good and you can rewear forever, basically. They're not like fall apart in 2 seconds and they end up in a landfill. So stuff like that, the older I get, the more I'm just cognizant of, and I think ultimately helps financially when you plan it out. Even if you're, spending more on, really nice pair of pants or a sweater, it's going to last you a long time and ultimately pay off more than buying like 7 sweaters at H&M, which I'm also guilty of doing.
So you love fashion then? You love fashion as well?
I do, yeah. I'm definitely passionate about style, beauty. I also became more interested in over the course of working at Digiday and Glossy, which was the name of the fashion vertical. I'm also personally really interested in health and kind of self-care and all of that stuff. So,
really,
it's been interesting.
Tell me a little bit about that. That's always very important.
Yeah, I was mostly a traditional retail and fashion reporter, so I didn't do a ton of the beauty stuff, but during my time there, I did kind of fall into the nationwide trend or like obsession with skincare, which I think a lot of people, there's been a lot of slamming of it, that it's frivolous and that all these like silly serums are like a waste of money, which to a certain extent, yes. And I was, fortunate that our beauty writer and editor oftentimes would get samples and, would let us all try it. So I wasn't necessarily purchasing the stuff all the time, but it was nice to kind of try it and find a good skincare routine that I do every day, and that is just like a constant in my life, that I find like it's like a small thing, but it's soothing. And I know at the end of the day, like I have this like 3-step or whatever thing I do every day. Yes. And just being like, I think regimented and dogged about that has made a difference. Wow. And I think that helps in these very uncertain times to have kind of this one thing.
Yeah, well, let me
that you enjoy.
Yeah, you have beautiful skin. So whatever your regimen is, it's working. I mean, I don't know. Do you naturally just have skin like that? Because you have beautiful skin. As I said when I came on this morning, I said, "Wow, you look like you could be in your teens." So your skin is beautiful.
No, that's so nice. it's honestly just from learning to take better care of it, and also to drink water, which everyone says, but I've always been very bad at about until recently, but makes a difference as well.
Yeah, so that like back in the day, we had a guy. His name was Fernando, and I think it was I forget the actor's name, but he would say it's always better to look good than to feel good. And I was like, oh yeah, but then when you get a little bit older, you kind of switch that up. It's like, I want to feel good, but your skin's it looks wonderful. So your take on so many things that you've learned. I always say, anytime you're out there and you're experiencing and you're out there in those treacherous waters, you're going to learn things that you're happy you learned, even if it was hard. You know what I'm saying? It's never easy to get the learning experience of anything, but you're fashion savvy, so you've learned how to purchase on a much lower level, so you can afford the same type of things that people are wearing. Because I was always big on, in San Francisco, because I'm from San Francisco, I was always big on going to the thrift shops even when I was younger, because very wealthy people take their things there, and I would get things that cost a lot more, and people say, wow, they used to call me Jack A. They used to say, you're always dressed, you have on these beautiful heels and dresses, and I'd just be like, wow, yeah, but I didn't have to pay that price for it, right? We want to look good, but we have to learn how to sacrifice. And I do know that there's so many women, even around me in the industry of doing hair, that I talk to, that sacrifice so much. And a lot of women, your debt is school debt. A lot of women have went so far in the industry with needing to look a certain way, they're in debt from that. I've heard of people being $50,000 and $100,000 of debt just from buying things that they really can't afford. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think that definitely exists, and it's sad to me, because I also think this is a bit gendered, and it's something women are particularly hard hit with. This is not to say men don't feel similar pressures, but I think in all industries, but especially in industries like fashion and stuff, in which you're giving off a certain aesthetic and you have to have a certain look, you feel like you have to have a certain look. I think it's, I've heard stories or read stories of people that have gone into significant credit card debt or whatnot just to maintain a certain look. And a lot of times those are even like people on the lowest levels of the fashion ladder. So like, assistant stylists or like assistant designer, all that stuff, like they're going through similar things. I think it's unfortunate, because I think that's a big part of society, and a lot of that is, ingrained systemic pressure that's not really going to go away, but I hope it gets better.
Yeah, I mean, I hope even this talk can do something to help people, because I know within my community, within the African American community, I know that we're very big on buying name brands. A lot of people can't afford it, right? Like the Nikes, even, and the Jordan tennis shoes. I know you heard stories about that, and the bags and the purses, and you really can't afford it, but the pressure to just be all designed up like that. Do you think that the times from now with the younger people have changed a lot? Because like I said, me being a baby boomer, the pressure wasn't that great, but what I see in young people now, and then I talk to them about what kind of jobs they have, and when I'm told what kind of jobs they have, I can see that they really can't afford that, right? They should be thinking about their future in a different kind of way, but it's all about looking the part.
Yeah, I think when I was at Digiday, I wrote a lot about Generation Z and the way brands are attempting to market to them, and read a lot of studies about what the younger generations, like the younger millennials and Gen Z, are looking for culturally. And I think it's really interesting, because for them, name brands is actually is less significant than I think than older generations. They are very much of this mindset, and not to generalize everyone, but based on some research, they like unique items and like personal experiences. They're more prone to spend money on experiences rather than name brand bags or whatnot. So I think that'll kind of bring a certain not like revolution, but like shifting mindset. And, one of the high-end fashion brands we wrote a lot about that really like caters to this well is Gucci. They are really smart about kind of seeing the youth culture and turning it on its head and using that to, ultimately sell more Gucci items, but just being smart about just thinking about what younger consumers want, even if they can't quite access that price point, they're still, they still want or are interested in, getting an accessory maybe, or like a sunglasses or a notebook or whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think younger generations care a little bit less about it, and I'm hoping that'll continue on to the older generations.
Yeah, that would be great, right? So we can all just get in there and do our job and be comfortable in our skin, because I think in the end, ultimately, that's what people really want. They just want to be accepted by who they are, not by what they're wearing or what they can afford, or I'm giving all this great stuff to just my job, right? So if people could just walk in and not feel inferior to what someone else may have, and maybe those people, like you said, that's generational wealth. A lot of people have that and a lot of people don't. And then of course we have the 1%, the 99%. We have people who can afford things on different levels, but the whole common reality of it is that if we could just be comfortable and do our job and not have to worry about those things. But that's not reality, right? That's based on, especially these days, people seem to judge you more on that than anything, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think image and what you show off to the world is always, I mean, that's the first impression anyone gives. That's the first, we're human, we're visual.
Yeah.
And it's hard to separate that from your sense of self or sense of worth. It's very tricky and fraught. I think it's hard to really pin down, but I do think it's important to, especially when you're interviewing or you're in a professional workplace, to put your best self forward and try and dress the part. I think that can be costly, but there are ways, and brands I think that are lower price that are getting smarter about dressing a woman in a professional environment. So I think things like that are helping for sure.
Yes, I mean, making it more affordable. And you did mention the gender thing, and I think that's so very important, because as men and women, we are always judged on work. That I say that even in the terms of when I do hair for women with hair loss. If the man's bald, he could pretty much get, that's fine. But if we walk in and we don't have hair, we're going to be automatically judged, right? It's going to be somebody to say, wow, why doesn't she have hair? So that's so important to who you are and what you look like. And I can kind of go through the brand thing and compare it to the hair thing, because there are people out there who really can't afford a nice wig or have something made for themselves to be themselves. And then but there's cheaper ways now to do it too. So, and still feel comfortable in your own skin. So it's all about, in the end, don't you think, just feeling comfortable with who you are and accepting who you are. And I think you learned early on to just be who you are no matter what, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes with time and also being in a supportive environment. May that be the workplace or just outside of the workplace, having friends that obviously care about you for you and not what you look like and how much money you have and what you're wearing, which, all these things are easier said than done, but, having a supportive group of friends and family members that, believe in you and aren't caught up in if you're wearing a luxury item or like if your hair looks perfect and all of that.
Right.
I think something that the older I get, I also tell myself is that, like, and my mom always said, oh, you're your own worst enemy, which is very true. And I'm always very concerned about how I come off or what I do in the world. But at the end of the day, like, we're our own harshest critics. Like no one is really judging you as much as you think they are. Because like thinking of myself, I'm never like outwardly like judging some. You know, we're all just very hard on ourselves. So it's something I'm try to be cognizant of in this context and all contexts.
Yes, yes, and that's wonderful. That's the way it should be for people. And I hope today that this show can help someone out there who may not be feeling comfortable in their own skin, or feeling comfortable about who they are, or feeling comfortable about what they have achieved, and know that it's we're always a work in process. I can tell you that at my age, I'm still a work in process, but all the outwardly love I have for myself, and not really worrying about if I'm, a bald woman, or if I'm overweight, or what did I eat, or where did I go? I mean, like you said, we're our own worst critics, and it can be really overwhelming for people. And so this is wonderful that we can find out today that just being ourselves should be good enough, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yes. So I think this kind of wraps up our show, unless there's something else you might want to say and you want us to know.
No, I think that was great. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. You are going to help a lot of young women out there, women period, on maybe, or just touch a nerve on what it's really all about. So you can find the She Compass Show on Instagram at shecompass.com, and you can find us on Facebook at She Compass, and Twitter at She Compass, and the website is shecompass.com. So all of that being said today, thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for your time, Renee. It's been a wonderful time talking to you, and my hopes are we can really help somebody out there just know that you are worth it, and without all the other stuff, great things are happening and can happen in your life. As you say, thank God it's Friday. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.